For everyone who just saw Fernando Mendoza projected as the 2026 #1 overall draft pick, you probably don't realize how close this came to never happening. The kid that now could potentially sign a $55 million guaranteed contract? 3 years ago, he was ranked 2,149th in his high school class, lower than backups currently starting at some FCS programs. Miami barely acknowledged him after a camp. He seriously considered quitting football altogether in high school. His only one real big-name offer? Yale. And even that didn't last. He flipped to Cal as a complete unknown. And somehow, this forgotten two-star went 16-0 as a starter, won a Heisman, and just became the most NFL-ready quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. So how did the biggest recruiting miss in college football history become the consensus #1 pick? And where does he rank among the greatest draft rises of all time? To understand how high Mendoza climbed in 2025, you have to see how low he started. We live in an era where 5-star recruits are treated like royalty before they even take a snap in college. They've had private quarterback coaches since middle school, custom-branded gear, and social media followings that rival mid-tier celebrities. But in 2022, Fernando Mendoza was invisible. According to recruiting services, he was the 2,149th ranked player in the country. Let that sink in. There were over 2,000 players considered better than the man who would eventually hoist the Heisman Trophy in 2025. He wasn't invited to elite camps. He wasn't featured in glossy recruiting profiles. He was just a kid at Christopher Columbus High in Miami, whose most important developmental years were disrupted by a global pandemic. While other quarterbacks were landing NIL deals and private training setups, Mendoza's phone stayed quiet. Even his hometown program, the University of Miami, treated him like an afterthought. They gave him a vague walk-on invitation and then effectively stopped communicating altogether. Everything around him suggested football was a hobby, not a future. For a moment, he listened. He committed to Yale. He was ready to trade packed stadiums for an Ivy League degree. But then, something unexpected happened. A late decommitment at the University of California opened a single scholarship spot. It wasn't part of a master plan. It was a break glass in case of emergency move by the Cal coaching staff. They needed a quarterback, and they needed one fast. In early 2022, Mendoza took the chance, flipped his commitment, and headed west. He arrived as a 2-star backup on a roster filled with higher-rated players, in a program where mistakes were costly and patience was limited. The Berkeley years changed everything. After redshirting in 2022, Mendoza was thrown into action in 2023. He didn't have the strongest arm in the Pac-12. He wasn't even the most dynamic runner. But he had something coaches value even more: an internal clock that was already elite. He learned how to read a secondary before the ball ever left the center's hands. By 2024, he started turning heads nationally, throwing for over 3,000 yards and playing with a level of composure that made him look like a veteran. Still, Cal wasn't competing for championships, and Mendoza knew that if he wanted to prove he was truly a Sunday-level quarterback, he needed a bigger stage. When he entered the transfer portal in December of 2024, everything changed. The same quarterback who received almost no attention out of high school suddenly became the most sought-after player in the portal. Every major program called, including Miami, now desperate, realizing they had let a special talent slip away. But Mendoza didn't chase flash or headlines. He chose a coach who matched his mindset: Curt Cignetti at Indiana. This move went beyond football. It was also about family. His younger brother, Alberto, had already followed Cignetti to Indiana a year earlier. When Fernando transferred in December 2024, he wasn't just chasing a title. He was joining his brother, who would serve as his backup quarterback during the 2025 season. For the Mendoza family, Bloomington became home. And everything about the move was intentional: development, comfort, and an offensive system built around decision-making and timing. The 2025 season wasn't just good, it was historic. The impact was immediate. This wasn't the Indiana team fans were used to seeing. This was a high-efficiency, professional-level offense. Mendoza operated from the pocket with a calm that unsettled defensive coordinators. He wasn't just throwing passes, he was dictating the game. He finished the season completing 72% of his passes, an efficiency number that almost feels fictional. And he wasn't padding stats with checkdowns. He attacked seams, threw back shoulder fades, and manipulated safeties with his eyes. By the end of a perfect 16-0 season, he had thrown 41 touchdowns against just 6 interceptions. In a conference as physical as the Big Ten, those numbers weren't just impressive. They were a referendum on every evaluator who missed him. Then came the college football playoffs. This is where the system quarterback argument disappeared. In the quarterfinal against Alabama, a program that once viewed him as a walk-on, Mendoza was surgical. 14 completions on 16 attempts. He didn't just beat Alabama, he solved them. The semifinal against Oregon followed. 5 touchdown passes. Complete control. Across the 2 biggest games of his life, Mendoza threw 8 touchdowns without a single interception. His efficiency rating sat above 90. At that point, NFL scouts stopped comparing him to college quarterbacks. They started comparing him to professionals. Near the end zone, almost every game, his mother Elsa watched. She has been battling multiple sclerosis for nearly 2 decades. Her fight became the quiet foundation of his. Every early morning, every film session, every hit he absorbed. When Mendoza won the Heisman Trophy, he didn't treat it like a celebration. He treated it like a thank you. He called his mother his first playbook, and it didn't feel rehearsed. He later used his NIL platform, valued at over $2.6 million, to raise nearly $200,000 for MS research. The final test came in the national championship game, Indiana versus Miami, in South Florida, surrounded by everything he was once overlooked by. For 3 quarters, it was a defensive struggle. Miami's front tested his durability and patience. Then came the moment. 4th down, red zone. Game on the line. The safe call was a field goal. Cignetti kept the offense out there. The snap was clean. The pocket collapsed. Mendoza didn't panic. He saw space, tucked the ball, and ran with force, dragging himself across the goal line. Indiana won 27-21, their first national championship. After the game, through the noise and celebration, Mendoza said, "I would die for my team." It wasn't exaggeration, it was relief. Now the conversation has changed. We're no longer asking if Fernando Mendoza is good. We're asking which NFL team gets him. On January 23, 2026, he declared for the draft as the projected number 1 pick. Scouts rave about his 2.5-second release. They trust his ability to stay on schedule even when plays break down. Think about the climb. He wasn't the top recruit on his own high school team. No congratulatory tweets, no spotlight, just years of being told, no. Now, general managers debate whether his processing speed is the best they've evaluated in a decade. His performance against Ohio State in 2025 is already being used as teaching tape for pro readiness. Pressure everywhere. Eyes never dropping. That's not taught. That's earned. He finished college with over 8,200 passing yards and a trophy case overflowing. But his real legacy is the blueprint he left behind. You don't need 5 stars to build a 5-star career. You need development, you need patience, and you need belief. The Mendoza era at Indiana may be ending, but its impact won't. Bloomington isn't just a basketball town anymore. It's a place where quarterbacks are built. Fernando Mendoza showed every overlooked recruit that the only evaluation that matters is the one that holds up over time. The NFL is next. The challenges will be bigger. The hits will be harder. But he's been preparing for this his entire life. Mendoza didn't just win a championship. He may have shifted how programs think about quarterback development. Portal transfers are evaluated differently when a player like this proves what experience and growth can produce. High school rankings still matter, but 3 years of college film can matter more. processing speed is starting to outweigh raw measurables in some scouting rooms, and Mendoza is a big reason why. Programs that once passed on him have already adjusted. Miami overhauled parts of its evaluation process in the 2026 offseason. Alabama's latest recruiting approach places greater emphasis on portal scouting alongside traditional rankings. The lesson is becoming harder to ignore. Bet on development, value decision-making, and don't underestimate a quarterback playing with something to prove. As we sit here in early 2026, the conversation has completely shifted. We're no longer debating whether Fernando Mendoza is good. We're debating who gets the chance to draft him. When he officially declared on January 23, 2026, it didn't feel surprising. It felt inevitable. Scouts are drawn to his 2.5-second release. They trust how he operates within structure. And maybe, most importantly, he looks comfortable when everything around him isn't. Think about how unlikely this climb really was. In high school, he wasn't even the highest-rated player on his own roster. He wasn't collecting offer graphics or trending with recruiting insiders. He was just looking for a chance to stay on the field. Now, NFL general managers are debating whether his processing speed is among the best they've evaluated in years. That kind of jump says something, not just about talent, but about persistence. Evaluators often point back to his 2025 performance against Ohio State as the cleanest example of pro readiness. Constant pressure, future NFL defenders closing in, and yet, his eyes never dropped. He stayed on platform, stayed composed. Those traits usually show up long before the draft process. They're built over time. He leaves college with more than 8,200 passing yards and a resume that speaks for itself. But the larger impact might be the path he created. For every overlooked quarterback watching this story unfold, the message is clear. Recruiting stars don't define your ceiling. Development does. Used the right way, the transfer portal can reshape not just a career, but an entire program. The Mendoza era at Indiana may be ending as he turns towards the NFL, and his brother Alberto has now signed with Georgia Tech to step into a starting opportunity of his own. But what happened in Bloomington won't fade quickly. Indiana isn't just known for basketball anymore. It's a place where one of the most unlikely quarterback rises in recent memory took shape. Mendoza has become proof for every player who has ever been ignored by a recruiter or told they weren't athletic enough. Early evaluations aren't final ones. He helped turn a program once viewed as predictable into a national champion. And he did it with steadiness that coaches covet. Years from now, when people look back at the 2025 season, they'll remember more than the touchdowns or the 72% completion rate. They'll remember the quarterback from Miami who refused to let early silence define him. The one who played with precision, toughness, and patience. The one whose mother, watching from the sideline, helped shape the mindset that carried him here. The NFL is waiting now. The speed will be faster, the windows tighter, the hits heavier. But if this journey has shown anything, it's that Mendoza tends to grow into whatever challenge is placed in front of him. He's already beaten long odds. The verdict is clear. Fernando Mendoza is going to be the #1 draft pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. And this might be the greatest recruiting to draft climb the sport has ever seen. So here's the final question. Is Fernando Mendoza the next great underdog success story? Or could he follow the path of prospects who soared late, but struggled to stick at the next level? Drop your take in the comments below. And for more deep dives into the stories shaping the future of the NFL, be sure to like and subscribe. Then check out the videos on your screen right now. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.